Hey guys, this is Catalin, and welcome to another episode of our show. Today, it's a pretty snowy and kind of like cold day where Cy is from, and I'm gonna tell you a bit about Cy. So my guest today, her name is Cy Wakeman. She's an international keynote speaker, business consultant, and New York Times bestselling author. Her books being reality-based leadership, which is the name of her company as well, reality-based rules of the workplace, as well as her newest book, No Ego, which is amazing. Cy's philosophy teaches people how to turn excuses into results and transform unhappy employees into accountable, successful members of the workforce. She worked with thousands of organizations worldwide and designs options for them to approach their work in a reality-based approach and have better results in everything that they do. So with that being said, thank you so much, Cy, for being on the podcast and taking the time to join us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
So, Cy, in order for to put it a bit of context into for people, I would really love to start with kind of tell me a little bit of your story and what was the aha moment that started everything for you? Like, when was the story that actually turned you from doing what you were doing at the time, I think 20 years ago or something, and turned you to do what you're doing today?
I probably have had two aha moments, not just one. And the first aha moment was when I was pretty young. I just had this sense that life didn't need to be that hard for people, and that people were making things much harder than they needed it to be, that basically suffering just was really optional. And I saw how even though reality was pretty kind, so many people added in their own story or their own suffering. And I just remember growing up in, a very cool family, but seeing at times how their stories added their suffering. When I was a leader in healthcare, I saw how often my employees' stories added to their suffering. And so I knew from an early age that I really wanted to help people to understand that like suffering is completely optional. And then probably the next aha moment was as I was leading in healthcare. I had started out as a therapist, but as a leader, I just started to see people not use good mental processes and make life harder than it had to be. And so I started teaching them just my philosophy and how they could do things differently. And then I started getting requests from all over. People would say, "Will you come speak to my group? I've heard what you do with your team." And the aha moment for me was when I realized that I could have a lot more freedom and help a lot more people if I left my leadership job and went out on my own. And I had two little boys at home that really helped me make that decision because I wanted to spend more time with them as well.
That's incredible. And can you talk to me about a little bit about your main concept? So you went from doing what you were doing at that time, and then you went into actually develop this framework and this philosophy called reality-based leadership, which I think is just really interesting. So tell me more about that. How did you went from there and actually develop this framework, and what does it mean?
So I would say I actually developed the framework while I was at work and then left to really, improve and grow it and move beyond it. So um, when I worked as a therapist with a counselor with folks, I worked with them often on what their goals were. They wanted success and happiness. And I would ask people, what is it that you're doing to try and be more successful and happy? Like, what is your current strategy? And they often said to me, well, in order to be happy or successful, I would need a different fill in the blank. Like they would need reality different. They would need a different spouse or a different boss or a different job. Everyone focused on how reality needed to be different in order for them to be successful and happy. So I would start teaching them just some basic rules. And rule number one is that your circumstances aren't the reasons you can't succeed, they're the reality in which you must succeed. And then I would teach them suffering is optional and most often self imposed. And I would just help people understand how their ego worked and how their mind worked and how they could move beyond their ego and how they could really move into accountable places. So I did that as a therapist. Then when I moved into a leader, I did that with my team. So by the time I left out on my own, I already had a real philosophy around reality based leadership. I'd done a lot of research while I was working in healthcare. And so when I left, I hit the ground running. Um, just even worried about, can I support myself and just even earn part of the income I was making. And the very first year, I earned far more than I was making in the corporate world. So it didn't feel like a leap for me. It felt like just saying yes to the next thing, which I really believe in, just saying yes to what's in front of you without expectation, but great expectancy. And so as I made that transition, what I had to learn more about, I had the philosophy, but I had to go out and learn about training and development and keynoting and online learning and social media. I had to learn all of the delivery mechanisms. So I had the content, I just didn't know how to get it to the people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of the biggest things I learned is, and I think Ryan Holiday talks about this in his book, Perennial, is that in the beginning, I thought I had to charge for everything and really protect my content. And what I've really learned is that people getting access to my content, you know, it's not about my competition isn't about people getting my stuff for free. My competition is obscurity. And so I need to overcome obscurity with giving everything I have away so that then that hikes up the value of what people get from me in person.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I mean, you got it 100% correct. Mainly because people focus so much on the marketing sense. Like, okay, I only know these things. If I tell them, why are people going to hire me for? But in reality, just
Exactly.
you're not competing against that. You're competing against nobody knows you yet. So what are you doing,
Exactly.
right? So it's just fascinating. The same reason that people are attached to the winnings that they have from gambling, like they're just scared or they're just angry that they lost whatever money, but they never really had that money in the first place to begin with. So why are you really angry about that? So let's go. Let's go. I would like to go into the root cause because I really love this concept of reality based anything, like just reality. I mean, Ray Dalio's book Principles talks about the same things. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. You cannot do anything unless you have a really good grip of reality. So why do you
Exactly.
think people avoid reality in the first place? Why doesn't everybody just act based on what they're given? Why do you think?
I believe it comes down to your ego. So your ego is like a filter that distorts your view of reality. And in order to live, your ego needs to always keep you in a story that you're the victim and other people are the villain. And a lot of people don't understand that their ego is doing the thinking and they're just doing the observing of the thinking. So they make the mistake of believing everything they think, and they really are unaware that their ego is like wearing a bad pair of prescription glasses, that it distorts reality. So for instance, let's say that you were late on this call, and you weren't late on this call, but let's say that you were late on this call.
Mm-hmm.
What I know for sure the reality is that we're in different time zones and that you're not on the call at the time I thought the call was. Now, staying in that very neutral place connected with reality, I can do a lot of problem solving. I can reach out to you, I can check my time zones, I can wait on the call knowing that the human factor, at times people are late, technology is funky. I can just stay in a really neutral place and problem solve. Or I can start believing everything I think, that he doesn't value my time and that he does this crap on purpose. And once I start believing my thinking, now I'm in a very narrow perspective. My view of reality is distorted. And I'm starting to react to that by saying, well, I'm not going to wait for him if he doesn't value my time. And I miss out on a great conversation that could have happened if I had stayed open. And then my ego tells me, see, that's why you can't trust people. That's why you can't take podcast invitations. And then when I go to a meeting with all of my peers, I tell them podcasting doesn't work because people take advantage of you and my business doesn't grow. And so I think a big component of this is our ego that distorts our view of reality, because reality is kind and beautiful and at least benevolent, Einstein said. And for me, I have to really check my ego at the door and bypass my ego all the time so that I can plug into the best part of reality. I've got to unhook. And that's why I teach people to get to know their ego and how they're being played. Because we know that the average person spends 2.5 hours a day in drama, 2.5 hours a day in drama because they listened or acted upon their ego rather than their best self, which when the drama's gone, your natural state is happiness and innovation and collaboration, everything you desire, happiness and success is your natural state once the drama's gone.
I just love that so much. When you were telling the story, I was like, my brain was like so happy and resonating with that because you hear that all the time. People just don't do things because of this complete narrative that they created in their mind. That's based on nothing outside of their minds, and it's just amazing to see how that happens. I actually read in your book that you've made this calculation based on what you just said, that 2 hours and a half of people's days are actually spent in drama. Like there was this, I think you did this incredible math, and I was like kind of excited about it, and that companies are losing billions of dollars every year because of that 2.5 hours every day, which is a lot of people's days. So,
It
go ahead.
I was going to say, it really is. As far as I know in the world, I'm the only drama researcher, and I discovered this quite by accident. But I've gone on to research the last 15 years and worked to really quantify how much time is wasted in drama. And it's 2.5 hours per day on average per head count, 816 hours per year. So if people listening take that times the average wage and salary of your employees or of yourself or opportunity costs. And it comes down to millions of dollars. And drama to me is emotional waste. And the way we handle waste in the workplace is through better processes. And the way we handle drama in the workplace is through better mental processes. So emotional waste is handled through better mental processes. And we all know incredible teachers out there teaching us universal principles that are better mental processes to use to go beyond ego and really eliminate this waste. And that's why I'm out teaching and preaching of bringing this into the workplace because, drama is there. And a lot of people say I'm not in drama, but I'm talking about venting, gossiping, judging, scorekeeping, resisting change, manufacturing these stories, withholding buy-in, withholding engagement, all the things that we do to separate ourselves from reality. And we all know that suffering comes from separation.
Yeah, 100%. And um, I would like to go into because what you're saying, I think it's really explained by, I think there's this equation of the value of an employee, right? That you have in your first chapter in your No Ego book. I believe, I'm not completely sure. I
Yep.
don't want to say not correct things, but there was this equation. So I would really love to dive into that, and then we'll go into stories on how drama actually affects the workplace. But I think that puts everything into really good context.
So
So,
persuasive. And I actually wrote a whole book on it. So reality-based rules of the workplace is a whole book on this equation. But the bottom line kind of thesis on this is when the whole world was evaluating employees on just their performance, I started to notice that there wasn't a correlation between the value an employee actually added and their performance measure. It just seemed like performance wasn't enough of a metric. And in the United States in healthcare, they started to pay us only on value we provided. And I was measuring my employees on performance, and it was very disconnected and uncorrelated. So I really worked hard to find an equation where I could measure the value of somebody's work. And here's what we came up with through our research: that the value of your work is your performance. What if you're consistently delivering what the organization needs today, if you're fluent in the now, plus your future potential. And the only way you're going to be performing into the future is if you stay relevant, if you're growing and developing as fast as what the market needs from you. So your performance plus your potential are really what you give to the organization, and we can quantify those. But there's another factor that you need to take into account when you're thinking about value. So value is a return on investment. It tends to be a ratio. And so on the top half of that fraction, that ratio is your performance and potential. But you need to subtract out, is how we do it, your emotional expensiveness. So not just look at what you give to the organization. That's where most people stop their math, but what you subtract from the organization in terms of emotional expensiveness, your drama quotient, your hassle factor, your freak out factor. And in our regression analysis, we found out that that drama quotient actually has a multiplier 3 to 1. So for 1 point in performance, you get a subtraction of 3 for the drama quotient. So do you want me to run the math for an example
Yeah,
for folks?
let's do it for a really high achiever that's extremely bad as an influence for other people and a really high ego, because I think that's so common and people let that happen
Yes.
just because they perform well. So let's walk through that example.
Okay, so I think first I'm going to walk through just my own score, and then we can adjust it just so people get it. So first, we're going to take performance on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is someone's not performing. 5 is they're curve breaking, right? And 3 is that they're consistently delivering what the organization needs. Now, if somebody scores a 5, rock star, they are really needing, it should be a temporary condition, because a lot of people are not 5s year after year. If they are, we need to like raise their goals, right? But on a scale of 1 to 5, I would tell you that if I rated myself, I'm a 3. I consistently deliver what the organizations I work for need from me. Now sometimes people will say, "Cy, you're a 4 or a 5, you're a rock star," and I will correct them because they're using really bad metrics. My competition isn't somebody, maybe these aren't speakers you've seen before or thought leaders. My competition really is worldwide, and my competition's big. Daniel Pink, Seth Godin, I mean, just amazing um, thought leaders, Brene Brown, Byron Katie. And so when I really think I'm a 4 or a 5, I'm probably putting myself up against the wrong competition. And so I'm a 3. I would rate myself a 3, and I want to be a 3 because it keeps me hungry and it doesn't distort my view of reality. So I'm a 3 in performance. Now, when you look at potential, this is how you're ready for what's next. And it's all about not just your technical skills, but are you technologically savvy? Are you a global citizen? Are you keeping up with what is happening in the world around you? So even though I'm 52 years old, I need to make sure that I'm on social media and I'm on podcasts. And every year I'm doing whatever I can to follow my millennials and my next generation to find out how their people consume so that I deliver it how they want it, not how I like it. And so on a scale of 1 to 5, a 1 is somebody like allergic to training and learning. A 3 is somebody keeping up with the times. And a 5 is, you know, those amazing folks inventing the future, like the people into singularity and getting robots to jump and those folks. So I'm a 3. I keep up with the times. So my score so far is 3 plus 3. Okay, so I'm a 6. Now I get to emotional expensiveness, and that's also 1 to 5. And the scale is inverted. So 1 is low drama, like Buddha, Gandhi, Muhammad, Jesus, those folks, right? A 3 is a typical person who believes they have a God-given right to have a fit now and then. They don't believe there's a price to drama. They go, I perform well, but once a month I get to have a meltdown. A 5 is somebody like unfit for human consumption. Like we all work around them. They drive us nuts. So on a scale of 1 to 5, I'm a 2. I'm pretty low drama, but I'm not evolved yet. So 6 minus 2, if everybody's following the math, would be a 4, except the drama factor gets multiplied by 3. We all know this. Drama spreads. It goes throughout the organization. It hurts our customers. So my 2 in emotional expensiveness becomes a 6. 6 minus 6 is 0. My value is 0. Now, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you add no value. That's not the case. At the end of an interaction, I'll have given somebody great value. They'll have paid me exactly what I asked for, and I leave the interaction even. I gave what I could that was great. They gave me what I asked for. I leave with energy left over for friends and family. And so I ask people, like, it would be amazing to go home every day even, from work, and I get to do that. So a no ego number is really a 0.
Mm.
Now, we found out, getting to these high performers, that so many folks who are rated as top performers under this new equation actually added negative value to the organization. They took away more than they added. And I have people all the time say to me, Cy, they're a rock star, but they're really hard to get along with, and they withhold information, they won't transfer it, and they're really critical. And I say, then quit calling them rock stars. Like, that's not a rock star. So let's take somebody who's a 5 in performance and they're set in the future. Let's say they're a 4 in potential. So they're a 9. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, their emotional expense, we won't even say that they're a 5, they're off the charts. Let's say that they're just a 4. They're just a bit more of a you have to manage them more than other people. Well, already that makes them a -3 to the organization. And so, what a lot of people don't realize, because we've justified forever they're good technically, but they don't have these teaming skills, is that today anything you do is a team sport. And any technical skill you have, we can probably get off the internet. Like, we all are technically replaceable because the internet has opened us up to every resource possible. But emotional expensiveness is really where it's at. How can you move into like life in a drama free way? And so we say that low drama is the new smart. Low
Mm.
drama is like the new competency we need from people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just there's probably not a lot I can say to approve of that, but I just agree with that so much. Even me, just in a small kind of like 20-person agency, and we're growing, but all those things, I see that happening a lot. If you get a person that's extremely smart, but then has a meeting with 8 people, and you can feel they're taking from 8 people 1 unit of enthusiasm. They're just taking one off of each and every one of those people are going to perform weaker for the next week just for that event, and people don't see it. And I'm biased of it too. I've made these decisions as well, and I think so many people that are listening and are leading companies, managing companies, and doing like just working with people, everybody's working with people, have seen those things happening. But we're so logically fooled by the conventional wisdom in that sense. We just like, oh yeah, just forget about them, let them do their thing. No, don't let them do their thing. So just spot on. Cy, let's go into I would really love, because I have some like practical cases, I would love to have some takeaways for folks, but I would really love for you to tell me, what do you think are a couple of like really meaningful stories that exemplify how leadership and how people working together with people should be done? I would really love to hear a couple of those stories, because you know better, and then I have a couple of use cases I would like to get into.
I would love to hear your cases. So, one of the things that I hear people do when they're leading out of ego, and I'm not talking about egomaniacs, I'm talking about ways that their ego plays us, is they use sympathy rather than empathy when they deal with people. And both sympathy and empathy are about, I see you and I understand that you're suffering. Sympathy, though, is I see you and I feel sorry for you, and I agree with you that the circumstances are such that we can't succeed, that we're victims. And empathy is I see that you're suffering and I would love to call you up to greatness. And many times I see leaders, out of trying to get people's buy-in, they lead with sympathy. So they might start a meeting with apologizing, like, I'm so sorry that we have a new um, request from a client and I don't think it's reasonable, but we've got to do it to keep them. And so, it's going to be difficult, and you already are so busy and you have so much on your plate. But if out of the goodness of your heart, you could step up and deliver this, we may be able to keep this client. And that whole thing is out of sympathy instead of empathy, which is I've agreed to a new request from our client, accountability, and I'm going to explain it to you. And I want to go around and talk about how we can make that happen without disrupting the business. And empathy is, basically just focusing on how can we do this without it being disruptive to the business. And I often say that leaders don't manage people, they manage energy. They manage energy away from why we can't and why we shouldn't have to how we could. And
Mm.
so I think that's one case where we really, our ego plays us to feed into their sad story about how it's impossible because of circumstances. And I think that's really important because people really enable folks when they play on sympathy rather than empathy.
Mm, okay. Yeah. Just yeah. That's awesome. And um, and how can we actually just curious on your thoughts on how can actually shift those people from that side to this one? Can we just tell them to their face, or how can we approach, for example, doing that transition from the sympathy to empathy side of things?
So when we're in sympathy, we're in ego, and ego is that prefrontal cortex part of our brain, and ego uses venting to avoid self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like a toggle switch between our low self and our high self. And great leaders need to bypass the ego. And so great leaders don't entertain venting and instead use a question for self-reflection to toggle people into the better part of their brain, the one that is full of innovation and collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
So one is I'm very careful how I present. I don't present with sympathy, I present with empathy. But empathy is always followed by a call to greatness. So here's our reality. No editorial of my ego, no sympathy. Here's our reality. And now I would like for us to think about how we can implement this without it being disruptive to our business. And when people wander to why it's a stupid thing we have to do, I just immediately manage the energy back to folks. We're not going to argue with reality. We are going to focus all of our energy on how we could. So, what's your next idea on how to make this happen? And you're really moving people constantly out of venting. And a great question to do that, actually, there's a couple. One is, what would great look like? And
Mm.
that's an amazing question to move people away from venting to self reflection. So,
Can you tell us
I
that story with the
yeah,
nurse and
with
the?
the nurse?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, sure. So I was on duty in a health center as a leader, and a nurse came in for her shift. And in her first patient room, she started to prepare a patient for a procedure, and she was going off of the electronic health record that was right in front of her. And as she was preparing the patient, explaining to them about the procedure and reading directly from the record, the patient got hysterical because that wasn't the procedure the patient had come in for. And the nurse got furious. She's like, this is unacceptable. So she tells the patient she'll be right back. And she finds me, her leader. And she comes to me and she starts venting. She's very upset. And she's like, this is unsafe. And people in the registration department can't manage their way out of a paper bag. And they need to understand how important this is. And somebody needs to do something. And heads should roll. And she's venting, venting, venting. But I know that she is operating out of ego. Her ego's been chafed because she was embarrassed by the situation. But we've got a patient who needs our help. So instead of venting and hearing her out and going the ego's path, I simply said, just take a deep breath and answer me this. What would great look like right now? If you were great, what would that look like? And it's a disarming question because the ego wants to vent. But to her credit, she entertained the question and she knew what great looked like. She's like, well, if I were great right now, I'd be back in the room. I'd explain to the patient that actually this is a process we have in place to catch exactly these types of mistakes. And I would use my skills to restore her trust and, rebuild it and involve her physician. And she knew exactly what great looked like. So all I had to say as a leader is then go be great. And I believe that the power of a leader isn't what we tell people to do, it's what we get them thinking about.
Mm.
And this question works for a few reasons. One, everyone knows what great looks like. It's what our ego traditionally uses to judge other people by. So I know what great looks like is what you're not doing. If I got coffee this morning, I know whether that was a great experience. I'm just asking people to use what great looks like, that knowledge, and call themselves up to greatness. Secondly, you can't vent and self reflect at the same time. And so a question bypasses the ego and gets you self reflecting. And self reflection is the foundation of accountability. So when I self reflect, I can find a place where I can go have impact. And engagement in today's world isn't about what we give you to make your world nice. Engagement is helping people find where they can have impact. They crave impact, so they can go plug and play and make a difference. And the best way to engage your people is use self-reflection so they can identify a place to have impact and go plug and play. So
Mm.
long story short, that's a key thing that leaders can do, is ask these questions for self-reflection. What would great look like? Another one is, what do we know for sure, so that people get out of their story. Another one, when people are judging, is what can you do to help, so that we can stop judging, start helping. And no ego, I really focus on teaching people these assignments for self-reflection.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's I mean, exemplifies the power of it so clearly, as well as there was this interesting concept that made me laugh. It was really good. It was actually she went into her BMW and drove right through your office or something like
Yes.
that. And that was like, man, that's so spot on. That's such good marketing right there. Like I'm excited. So can you tell me what a BMW is and how is that wrong?
Yeah, so I drive a BMW, a car, and I know in Europe that means something different. But BMW for my work is bitching, moaning, and whining. And
Mm-hmm.
so we immediately, when we're venting, we jump into our BMW, our car, and we go off and we drive it to our manager's office to bitch and moan and whine. But when we're venting and not self-reflecting, what we're usually venting about is the story of what happened, not the actuality of what happened. And it is, we're usually venting about things that never happened, and venting feels good. It
Mm-hmm.
feels great, but so does like crack cocaine. It's just not like a sustainable lifestyle. Like, we leaders are letting far too many people vent, and it's growing the ego rather than moving us to that very peaceful place of self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite quotes, I started the book with this, from Rumi, and it says, out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. And all these ideas of right doing and wrong doing are all about judgment
Mm-hmm.
and judging others. And I really want leadership to be about getting people outside of that field, getting them outside of the field of right doing and wrong doing, the field of judgment, and moving them to a place where there's a whole nother area that we can, beyond judgment, really make a difference and have impact. And I think that's our role as a leader, is to help people use good mental processes to eliminate emotional waste.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And just to kind of I think this would be really valuable for folks. So now that we've set a little bit of the context and the perspective for people to understand what we're going to talk about, I would like to take kind of some situations. I mean, I've just had like a 15-second brainstorm meeting with my team. I was like, okay, shoot all the things you're complaining about or you're worried about. Let's have them as questions. So let's see how that looks like. So the first thing would be, so I'm just gonna walk you through some situations. I'm curious on your thoughts. So first one would be, let's just say one of our team members, one of a company's team members, has a project that needs to be done in 2 weeks. Time passes. In 2 weeks they come back, and for 3 minutes they go on, or for more, on why the task has not been done for X reason, Y reason, all these things. I feel in that case, for leaders, there's like three of decision making. One, you could either be the low conscientiousness kind of leader, like, okay, maybe this happened and they had something wrong in their life, blah, 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 blah. Or you can go high conscientiousness and be like, no, that's wrong, result is all that matter, like you're fired, right? So there's two extremes. What do you think is the approach in order to solve that kind of situations? Because I think this is something that happens probably quite often in every organization.
So I think your example, low and high consciousness, I would say both of those are low consciousness, because
Conscientiousness.
I'm sorry. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Um, so what I would tend to do, before we questioned how you let something go 2 weeks and then you're surprised by that, I would say, when people are coming in and they're telling me the whole story about why it didn't happen, is I listen for the facts and I try and edit the story down to the facts. So if people said, well, the other team didn't get back to me and we had technological difficulties and the client, stalled and was unsure and they didn't give me the information I needed, I would say, okay, let's do a reality check. You were responsible for a project due today, and the reality is that the project is not complete. And so what you need to do is take people out of the story and into what the reality is. So today's reality is the project's not complete. And then I would say, let's self-reflect. Can you just sit? Now give them some time. Can you sit for a moment and starting with the word I chose, I denied, I did, I didn't, find at least 3 ways in which your behavior contributed to this outcome. And feedback is short, the project's not complete. Self-reflection needs to be long. That's where really people find it. And they'll come back and they'll say, well, I already told you marketing didn't do what they needed to do. And I'll say, you know what, I really want to help you grow and problem solve in this. And the first thing is ownership. So let's account for how you got here. If we have the ability to account for it, then we have the ability to respond differently. So I'm not going to fire somebody if they can account for it and make a plan to respond differently, right? I only work with the willing. And so I'll say, I need you to come up with and account for 3 things that you did or chose or denied or assumed. What was your part in this? And a lot of times it takes people a while. And then when they come back with 3, I go, great. If you got 3, I want 5. So come back with 5 more. And what you want people to get to is, I used hope as my strategy. I assumed that when I didn't hear back from the client that they still had this on top of their priority. I didn't manage the client well. I needed to have had some concrete checkpoints. I'm not skilled in project management, and therefore I didn't scope this project well. Like, I want them, not blame, but for them to own where they have the issue. And then I can say, so in the future, what can you commit to learning or getting skilled up in or doing differently to ensure that projects will happen on time? Now, what most people want to do is have you agree with them that they had these imperfect circumstances. And you know what?
That's the
Every
victim
single
mentality,
day we
right?
have circumstances. So there's no bonus points for circumstances. So when people go, but you don't understand, I had 2 other projects come in, I help them and I say, given the fact that you normally will have other new projects coming in on a regular basis, how can you ensure you'll still succeed? Like, what do you need to change? What do you need to adapt? So that I'm helping them grow in their insights on where they need to grow next. So most people want us to fix their circumstances, but they're in pain because that pain is a symbol of where they need to grow next. And growth comes in bite-sized pieces. And when we let people blame their circumstances, we rob them from the development they need in order to be more skillful. So I always say, I'm not going to work on changing circumstances. I'm going to work on growing you so that you're more skillful, so that you can move freely in any circumstance. So grow the people rather than let the circumstance be the excuse. That's how I would handle it.
I was saying that I just love that because it's so practical, and what you were saying could be just literally taken by somebody and just literally be applied in their next meeting. And I think there's something magical about that because number one, people are so used into rewarding victimhood that it actually there's something weird there. I think it's a Pavlovian bias or something. I'm not definitely really knowledgeable in that sense, but I think there's something within that. When we reward people for bad behavior, they take that as good behavior, and that's so bad, I'm guessing. What do you think about that?
Yes, we leave people, when we sympathize, we leave them reinforced in their viewpoint that they're victims, and that reinforces ego, that ego's interpretation of the world was accurate. And what leaders need to do in bypassing this ego is interrupt people's thinking over and over and over again, so they get the sense that their ego is not a good read of reality.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, and talking about we've talked about the BMW. I thought that was such an interesting idea. The other one that I think it's really interesting, and I want to set some context here, but you probably know better. It's about responsibility and setting clear goals and expectations. And I believe those connect together, but you tell me, what do you think plays the match? Because there's always this thing, yeah, but you didn't tell me to do that. You didn't set the expectation. And that's always such a good excuse. It almost passes. So what do you think about setting clear expectations and goals and then taking responsibility for what happens? What do you think the connection is there?
When you're working with high accountables can move through life with a lot of ambiguity. And as much as I push, they pull. And so I will do my darndest to set clear expectations and goals with my teams. But I also tell them I will screw this up, but only daily. And that their job is to pull as much as I push. And so I cannot have them passively sitting by, waiting for the perfect circumstance, the perfect expectation, the most clarity. It's an
Mm-hmm.
iterative process. And so I need to put things out there. They need to try it on for size. They need to be working it in their own reality and pushing it back to me iteratively.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but a lot of people crave clarity and then I can act. And a lot of times clarity only comes through acting.
Mm.
So if I would have said, I need a perfect social media strategy before I execute, I would still be waiting to execute. But what we did instead was we started where we were with videographers and documenting, not creating, much like Gary Vee does.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got to working with his team, and we just launched a Facebook watch show, Life's Messy, Live Happy, and we're constantly updating that because we want to engage with our public, and that makes sure it's interactive. And so gaining clarity is a daily process,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not some mecca I can get to. It's like, so people have these excuses that really trick their leader's ego into believing, yeah, none of us have clarity, so we can't go forward. But your competition doesn't have clarity either, and they're making a move. And so good people who are moving beyond ego are fine with good enough, because we want clarity so that the ego never has to get exposed. um, and it's like playing poker. If you and I are playing poker and you ask me to place my bet and I say, well, I want to see your cards first, right? That's
Mm.
not how we play poker. And a lot of people commit half-heartedly. They're like, I'm committed as long as you're clear and you communicate and everybody has to do the same thing. And that's not commitment. That's not going all in. And so I talk to people that buy-in is a verb, and just know that whatever you're buying into, you'll have lack of clarity. Your circumstances will always be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
We have to succeed anyway.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's some. I was actually checking yesterday into a university book, and I just read these because they're so knowledgeable. There was this study done back in the 70s in Russia, which obviously concluded. I'm not sure if how much accuracy it still has today, but it basically said that you need 13.5% of information before you act. You don't need 100%. You don't need 5%. You need 35.5. Sorry. And I thought that's really interesting because you kind of get the feeling, yes, I will act, but only if I know enough. And that's not really accurate. So I think that's pretty interesting.
And that's the difference between ego and confidence, because ego is like, I must know the way, or I do know the way, and there's only one way, and it has to be my way, and I'm the best, and I am right.
Uh-huh.
Whereas confidence is, I know I have some skill sets to bring to the table that we'll use to figure it out as we go.
Mm-hmm.
And confidence can be in that beginner's mind where I don't know very much, but I know that I've got good networks. I know I've got good skill sets. And so when people are beyond ego, they can move forward with a lot less information
Mm-hmm.
because they are confident, but the ego wants the deck stacked in its favor before it moves. And so I think that study still stands. I heard General Colin Powell, a U.S. general, talk about, just from a military standpoint, when is enough information, versus too much information. And it was right in those ranges that you cited. So I think that's still relevant research.
And all these things that you're talking about, and I mean, I highly encourage everybody that's listening to go ahead and read your books, because I think they're so good. I mean, I'm still thinking about it to make it a must read for everybody till like next week. But the thing I was thinking when I was reading your book, and I had this experience with a couple of people I tried to help in their training process and whatever it is, my experience was, and I'm pretty sure this is a common thing, that some people you just cannot help them.
That's true.
It's just they're so stuck in their own reality of excuses and limitation. Is just so, it's just too much, and it's probably not worth the effort at all times. My question would be, what can people do that are in all kind of situations of society and positions? What are some daily practices like meditation or other things like that you do or recommend that people could do to kind of be able to look at their ego, be able to kind of detach themselves? Because that's a skill within itself, and I think it's so interesting how we can have that better.
Yeah, I definitely think the more you can practice unhooking from your own ego and separating so that you understand that you're the observer and that you're just being thought. So I practice transcendental meditation 2 times a day, 20 minutes a day. It's been life-changing. And so I would recommend whatever meditation practice you have. I also notice when I get into any type of stress that if I'm feeling stress or a feeling of anger or being upset, I quickly go into an exercise I call editing my story, where I really write down my story on a piece of paper. I get it out from where my ego can play with it and manipulate it into conscious and visible on paper. And then I look at what I'm believing and I ask myself just a few questions. And I was taught these by Byron Katie. If you don't know her work, she's at thework.com. It's just amazing. But the questions are, what am I believing right now? And is it true? Can I absolutely know it to be true? And then who am I when I believe that? And then who am I, or who would I be without that story? And then I play with it to get mentally flexible. So let's go back to that you didn't call on time. So what do I know for sure? He does this stuff on purpose. I'm like, well, I can't know that for sure. But who am I when I believe that? Well, I'm uppity and I'm righteous and I'm ready to just give up on this opportunity. Who would I believe without that story? I would just be Cy, patiently waiting, getting some work done, excited about the opportunity. And, and then I get mentally flexible. It's like, he does this on purpose. What would be another explanation? He doesn't do it on purpose. You know what I mean? It's like a mistake. And there are ways to play with this so that you free yourself up from that ego's grasp on, I know the truth, so you can get back into beginner's mind and back open to all that the universe has to give you. We miss out on so much of what the universe has to offer us because we're so into believing our ego and this distorted view of reality. So those are 2 things I do. I edit my story a lot, and I, whenever I'm feeling stressed, and I meditate.
Yeah, it's just I also do TM. I've done it for a year, and it's been also extremely helpful for me as well. But what you were saying with the thought process, I think it's just great. And for me, how I translate that, and I think what you're saying, it's 100% right. I just, like, before I just react, like, just take 10 seconds, like 20, that's it. Like, I don't want any more of that. It's the same thing I do when I want to do something and I don't feel like it. Like, I'm just going to do it. And if in 20 seconds I still don't feel like it, or in 5 minutes, I'm just going to stop. But it never does, right? It's the same with thinking. When you're getting angry, like, just take 20 seconds and just think about it. Look at yourself. Do the things that you said. And if you still feel like acting in the same way, do it. But you probably won't. So,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. And I think that's why it's so tricky at work because we know our technical functional area, and the ego has us believing we know a lot more at work than we do. Because I will see a scientist follow the scientific process only sure about what he or she knows for sure in their technical work. And then I see them in their relationships relying on anecdotal evidence.
huh.
They would never use anecdotal evidence in their technical work, but they use it in their relationships because the ego has them overstretching their bounds. And at work, people are so confident about what they know for sure that if we can get people questioning their thinking at work, it can really open us up to profound possibilities.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Sai, I have a couple of ending questions, and then I'm gonna let you go. I want to be respectful of your time, but I think this was really interesting. So well, let's just start with this because I want people to be able to follow you and be able to kind of learn more about what you're doing. Where can people learn more about what you do? And just tell us a short bit about what your company does and how they can help folks like companies and what type of people do you guys work with? And just tell me a little bit about yourself and stuff like that.
So first and foremost, at Cy Wakeman, CYWAKEMAN, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cy Wakeman. We have a wonderful channel. Please push subscribe and follow. Life's Messy, Live Happy is our Facebook watch show. Go and follow in all those areas. Our website is at realitybasedleadership.com. And at that website, you'll see that we take our research and my writing and we produce learning programs where we come in, we do keynotes all over the world, we do training sessions, we do public sessions where people can come and learn from us, and we certify people to teach our work. We even have an online learning program for those of you that are um, obviously around the globe, that you can get virtual training in all of my work very inexpensively on the website. So we teach people how to ditch the drama from their organizations so that they can free all that energy up for results and happiness at work.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And guys, just it's actually funny the way I've got to actually have this interview with Sai because I had one of my managers actually get into your work first, and they kind of told me about it for a couple of months, like, oh, you need to read this book, and I was like, no, I don't have time, right? Like, don't like, I'm gonna read it later. And then I read your book. It was No Ego. Read it a couple of months ago, I think 4 months ago or something, and I was like, wow, she's so amazing and it's so spot on, and it's just so heartwarming for me when I see that approach of like, just listen to reality. I know it hurts. Just go with it. You're gonna get better results. Just work with it. I know. Just do that, and then you're gonna get so on top of it. It's gonna be amazing. So highly recommend her work. Go and read her book. It's just amazing. One final question, Sai. Um, I would like to know, because this is January, I would like to know what are some of your 2018 goals, and yeah, just some of your goals. I'm really curious to hear those out, and I think it's interesting.
So, for our company goals, we are looking for bigger stages and really amplifying our voice through social media while keeping a very small footprint. So, that's our company goals. My personal goal is just to really focus on being much kinder to everyone. And what I mean by that is, I often think that which I think is missing is that which I'm not giving. If I think it's so easy, I'll go first. And being a citizen of the United States right now, we have a lot of language and actions that are separating out and being unkind and non-inclusive. And so I am going to go first to create what I want in the world. And so my word I'm walking with this 2018 is above all else, kindness. I believe love wins every time. So I'm going to work to be incredibly loving to everyone that is in my life and I get to have contact with. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my goals.
That's lovely, and I've actually looked at some of your. I actually seen that you guys were doing a lot more stuff on social, so I think that's amazing, and it's just awesome that I hear you say that. Mainly because I'm just even though there's, like you said, there's a lot of bad stuff happening. There's also a lot of folks, even like people like Russell Brand. I don't know if you know him.
I
Um,
do.
he just went on for the last year and talks about his story of recovery and sharing love and everything. And if there's more people like you and like Russell and I'm hopefully like me as well, that can go and spread that word, eventually it's gonna catch up. That network effect is gonna go there, and people are gonna be able to live in a much higher state of consciousness at all times, which is something that you also speak as well. So um, thank you so much, Cy, for joining in. Thank you everybody for listening. We're gonna have the links that Cy talked about also in the description. So her website, Facebook, all those things, if you didn't heard them or didn't have time to note them down. But in any case, thank you for listening again, and see you in the next episode.